As the sun began to set on the crisp January evening, the air around the National Mall in Washington, D.C. buzzed with a charged anticipation. The scene was set for an event that millions across the globe had been eagerly waiting for: the 2025 inauguration of Donald Trump. It was a moment of triumph, of history unfolding, as the 45th President of the United States prepared to take the oath for a second time. But this inauguration would not just be a simple ceremony. It would be a spectacle, a symbol of the complex, sometimes controversial, legacy that had followed Trump through his first term. And as Trump and his wife Melania made their way to the Commander-in-Chief ball, the eyes of the world would be watching every move. It wasn't just another evening in D.C., it was the culmination of a political journey that had seen Trump rise from a businessman with no political experience to one of the most polarizing figures in modern American history. And Melania, often seen by his side, had become a figure of grace, poise, and quiet strength throughout the years. Their marriage, often the subject of scrutiny, had weathered the storms of the public eye, and tonight, as they prepared to step into the spotlight once more, the world couldn't help but wonder, what was next for this powerful couple? As the evening's events unfolded, the streets surrounding the National Mall were alive with celebrations, protests, and the murmurs of anticipation for what this night could mean for the future of the United States. The air was thick with excitement, as supporters and critics alike took their positions, ready for what would surely be a defining moment in the country's history. Trump's second inauguration was set to be a statement, one that would resonate far beyond the night of the ball. It was a moment for him to remind his base of his commitments, but also a moment of reflection, where the realities of the past years would hang heavily in the air. Would the evening be a celebration of what had been achieved, or a prelude to the battles still to come? The Commander-in-Chief Ball wasn't just a party. It was an event charged with meaning, where tradition met the ever-evolving political landscape of the country. Trump and Melania would make their grand entrance, but it was unclear whether the evening would be one of revelry or a more somber reminder of the divided nature of the nation. The media, positioned in the back of the grand ballroom, eagerly snapped photographs, ready to capture every gesture, every expression, every detail. As Trump took the stage to address the room, the energy shifted, and for a moment, the grandiosity of the event seemed to settle into a quieter, more introspective tone. Melania stood beside him, regal as ever, her eyes scanning the crowd. It wasn't just about the next 4 years, but about everything that had come before. The themes of triumph, division, loyalty, and leadership hung in the air like an unspoken question. Where would this journey take them, and how would it all end? But even as Trump prepared to speak, there was something off, an undercurrent of uncertainty that couldn't be ignored. Was the country ready for another 4 years of his leadership? Was Melania, too, ready to step back into the spotlight as First Lady once again? For all their public composure, there were whispers of tension behind the scenes, of a marriage under pressure, of a leader who might have felt the weight of expectations heavier than ever before. And in that moment, as the room fell silent, all eyes turned to the couple, waiting for what they would do next. What would the night hold? Would it be an elegant and seamless continuation of their first term, or would the cracks in their public persona begin to show? Then, just as Trump opened his mouth to speak, the lights flickered for a split second. The crowd gasped, unsure of what was happening. Was it a technical glitch? A momentary power outage? The uncertainty hung in the air as the First Lady subtly glanced at her husband, their gazes meeting in a brief exchange, one that was too fleeting for anyone to truly decipher. And in that single moment, everything changed. The tension that had been building throughout the evening suddenly took on a sharper edge. What did this disruption mean? Was there more happening behind the scenes than anyone could see? Was this the beginning of something bigger, something far more complicated than a simple ball, than a second term? The room fell into an uneasy silence, and the clock ticked on as the weight of what had just happened started to settle in. Trump's next words would set the tone for the rest of the evening. But would they be the words everyone was expecting? Or would they reveal something none of us could have anticipated? As the night continued, the suspense only grew. The evening had only just begun, and already the sense that something bigger was in motion became undeniable. The questions: who could be trusted? What the future would hold? Whether this second term would mark a return to business as usual or something radically different, lingered in the air like a shadow, casting a long and uncertain future ahead. With the ball still in full swing, the question on everyone's mind was clear. How far would Trump go this time? And what role would Melania play in the unfolding drama that was about to take the world by storm? And as we look ahead to the coming days, there's one thing that is certain. The story of Trump's second inauguration is far from over. What happens next will be told in the pages of history, and we're all just beginning to write that story. Stay tuned to see how this chapter unfolds. As the night stretched on, the tension at the commander-in-chief ball seemed to thicken. The brief flicker of the lights had left the room feeling slightly off-kilter, like a subtle crack in an otherwise perfect facade. People continued to dance, but their smiles were tighter, their conversations quieter. The reporters, ever vigilant, whispered among themselves, exchanging glances. It was clear. Something was wrong. Something was about to shift. For Donald Trump, the evening had already been a whirlwind. As a businessman turned politician, his life had always been a series of calculated moves, decisions made for impact, for influence, for control. Yet, even he couldn't have predicted the growing unrest among his supporters and critics alike. While his base celebrated his victory and the promise of 4 more years, others were less enthusiastic, even resentful. His return to power was a declaration that the last 4 years of tumult, division, and controversy had not been enough to stop him. But the cracks in his legacy, whether due to his handling of the pandemic, his divisive rhetoric, or his complicated relationships with global leaders, couldn't be ignored. The country seemed more divided than ever before, and within that division, Trump found himself walking a tightrope between holding onto the loyalists who had gotten him to this point and addressing the rising voices of dissent from within his own party. Melania, standing by her husband's side, was no stranger to the scrutiny that had followed them both throughout their time in the public eye. Her every move, every look, was dissected by the press, and her silence often spoke louder than words. She had always been the enigmatic First Lady, graceful, composed, but with an air of distance that made people question her true feelings. Was she truly supportive of her husband's second term, or had the weight of the political spotlight grown too heavy? In private moments, away from the cameras, there were whispers that Melania was conflicted, uncertain of what the next 4 years would mean for her and her family. She had always been more reserved, preferring to maintain her dignity in the face of chaos. But behind her poised exterior, was there more brewing? What did she truly want? Was she prepared to stand by her husband in this new chapter? Or was there a quiet rebellion stirring within her, too afraid to surface? Their marriage, too, had been a subject of constant curiosity. Many wondered how it had survived the highs and lows of their political journey. The pressure of the public eye, the years of controversy, the constant media scrutiny. Could any relationship endure that kind of stress? It was said that Melania had often been the stabilizing force behind the scenes, but the cracks that had started to show in Trump's public image were starting to reflect in his private life as well. Was the Trump marriage still strong, or had it become a carefully constructed partnership for the sake of appearances? And as the night continued, the question on everyone's mind seemed to be, would these tensions break open under the weight of the moment, or would they continue to fester in silence? The commander-in-chief ball, once a symbol of triumph, now felt more like a ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, there were whispers in the back corners of the ballroom, growing louder as the night wore on. Speculation spread like wildfire, and with each passing hour, it became clear that something larger was unfolding. The disruption with the lights had only been the beginning. There were reports of a looming crisis, a crisis that threatened to shake the very foundation of the administration. Rumors of internal strife within the White House, of high-ranking officials distancing themselves from Trump's leadership, circulated among those who were in the know. Some said it was a political move, an attempt to discredit Trump's second term before it could even get started. Others whispered about deeper, more personal conflicts that were brewing beneath the surface. The evening was at a tipping point, and no one seemed to know which way it would fall. Outside, the city was alive with protesters, both for and against the incoming administration. Marches filled the streets, chants echoed off the buildings, and police barricades lined the streets. The noise seeped through the walls of the ballroom, reminding everyone present that while they were celebrating, the country outside was in turmoil. The divisions that had been building for years now came to a head, and Trump's second term was starting to feel like the match that would set everything ablaze. Would he be able to unite a fractured nation, or would his presidency ignite even further division? Inside the ballroom, tensions mounted. Trump's supporters cheered him on as he took the stage once more, but even their applause felt hollow, as if everyone was waiting for the next big revelation, the next bombshell that would alter the course of the evening. Trump's face was unreadable, as if he too was unsure of how the night would unfold. His speech was a mixture of defiance and reassurance, but his words felt empty in the face of everything that was unraveling. Was he still the man who had promised to drain the swamp? Or was he now a leader in free fall, struggling to maintain control of a ship that seemed to be sinking? And then, just as the night was nearing its peak, the moment came. A surprise announcement. It was as if everything had been building toward this. The president, standing at the podium, seemed to hesitate. The room fell silent as he reached for the microphone, his hands trembling ever so slightly. The words that came next were simple, but they were enough to send shockwaves through the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trump said, his voice carrying across the room. "The situation has changed. It's not what you think." And just like that, the carefully constructed world of the commander-in-chief ball shattered, leaving everyone in suspense, wondering what would come next. The room fell utterly silent as Donald Trump's words hung in the air, a heavy weight pressing down on the gathered crowd. "The situation has changed. It's not what you think," he repeated, his voice firm, but tinged with uncertainty. The reporters, their cameras poised, caught every detail, every shift in his demeanor. The audience waited on edge, unsure of what this meant. The energy in the ballroom shifted dramatically. What had started as a moment of celebration was now an atmosphere of confusion, of intrigue. Trump's eyes scanned the crowd, but there was something different about his expression now. The defiant leader, the man who had stood so resolutely during his first term, now appeared vulnerable, almost uncertain. The room remained silent, the tension palpable. It felt as though time itself had slowed. Melania, standing beside him, kept her gaze fixed straight ahead. Though her face showed a subtle tightness, she, too, could feel it, the impending shift. Then Trump took a deep breath, and with the flick of a hand, he motioned for the room to quiet even further. A special guest had arrived. The door was at the back of the ballroom opened, and a figure stepped inside. A man whose identity sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. It was former Vice President Mike Pence. But what was he doing here? After all that had transpired between him and Trump, this sudden appearance sent a wave of disbelief over the attendees. The years of public disagreement, the division that had followed the Capitol incident, the fallout, it all rushed back. Many had speculated that Pence and Trump would never be in the same room again. But here they were, together. The implications were enormous. Did this signal a reconciliation, an unexpected turn of events that would reshape the entire political landscape? Pence walked toward the stage, and without missing a beat, Trump greeted him with a handshake that held more meaning than anyone in the room could have anticipated. Their eyes locked for a brief moment, and it was clear there was more being communicated than the world could fully understand. The murmurs in the room grew louder. What was happening? Was there an alliance being forged in the midst of the chaos? Were they finally setting aside their differences to unite for the sake of the nation? Trump addressed the crowd once more, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the moment. "This is not the future we expected," he began, his eyes now shifting between Pence and the room. "But is the future we will build together. There are forces out there, forces who would divide us, destroy everything we've worked for. But we will not back down. Together, we will rise above." The crowd, still processing the unexpected twist, began to react. The applause was hesitant at first, then grew louder as people began to realize the magnitude of the moment. Pence, now standing at Trump's side, smiled briefly, his calm demeanor belying the tension in the room. The two men were no longer just political rivals. They were now standing as a unified front, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. For Melania, it was a moment of quiet reflection. She had been through so much over the years, always the supportive wife, always the poised first lady. But now, as she stood by her husband's side, she couldn't help but feel a shift. What did this new alliance mean for her role? For her family? Was this truly the beginning of something greater? Or was it simply another chapter in the unpredictable saga that had become the Trump presidency? The ballroom, once filled with a sense of uncertainty, now hummed with energy. What had initially felt like a fractured event, teetering on the edge of collapse, had somehow found a way to rebuild, to unite. It was a new chapter, not just for Trump, not just for Pence, but for the entire nation. As the night drew to a close, Trump and Pence stepped off the stage, their presence together casting a shadow over the event. The press quickly flocked to them, eager to ask questions, to dig deeper into the meaning of this unexpected turn. But the answers were still unclear. Was this the start of a political reconciliation, or had they simply made a strategic move for the sake of power? One thing was certain: the stakes had just been raised. The nation was now watching with bated breath, waiting for the fallout, for the ramifications of this moment to unfold. Could Trump's second term truly unite the country, or had this brief moment of reconciliation only delayed the inevitable conflicts? As the guests slowly filtered out of the ballroom, the night still buzzed with whispers. The streets of Washington, D.C. were alive with the sounds of protest, celebration, and uncertainty. The future of the country, the future of the Trump administration, and the future of those involved were all now in flux. And as the lights dimmed on the Commander-in-Chief ball, the world was left with one lingering question: what would the next 4 years look like? And who would be left standing when the dust settled? The story of Trump's second inauguration wasn't over. It had only just begun. And with that, the nation waited. The clock was ticking. The resolution to this political drama was yet to come, and no one knew exactly how it would all unfold.